Gonna proc it now. Gonna proc it now. By Jackson Aurelia. Jackson Aurelia. Gonna proc it now. Gonna proc it now. Proc it Jackson Aurelia. T-Force.
Welcome to the rework of the T-Force. Now we going hard cause we bumping at the beat source. It's a 3-course dinner of dudes bringing the news and stats, interviews and cash from the pro scene. So fresh and so clean, like you're leaning with Nami in the bot lane. Keep it hot like brand, practicing his dot game. Give it to you easy like you're Resi in the bot game. Imagine Draven at prime time. Now ulti like LeBlanc can copy that 4 times, but manlier. Knock it up like now fight planning a family-er. You gotta be tuned in like Sona on the ad wall. Get on the chat call. Can a podcast really be all that? Of course. How do 4 guys make a Triforce?
Hey guys, welcome to Trinity Force Podcast. My name is Adam Ponophobia Cogswell, and I am your host for this lovely evening. As you are watching episode number 265, as you can see, there's only a few of us on the show this week, but that's because we brought a very special guest. So it's hard for me to actually introduce you because there's a running joke on the podcast right now where I always introduce Chira last, but I feel like I have to introduce the crew first and then the guest last. So, like, what do I do? I'm between a rock and a hard place.
You know what, Adam? I'll take the wind out of your sails. Hi, guys. I'm Chira. What's up, everybody?
So Chira's here. I'm here. And we have a awesome guest, Hazel. You'll remember him. We spoke about his ranked 5s article a number of episodes back, and we decided to bring him on to do a full-on discussion to get his opinion on everything that we had talked about. So hi, Hazel.
Hi guys, I'm very excited to be here.
Yes.
So let's get going.
Yeah. Well, why don't we first and foremost, why don't you introduce yourself, talk to people what you do, what you do, who you work for, any sponsors, everything that people might need to know about you and what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so I'm Hazel. I'm a League of Legends coach, and on the side of that, or technically this is my side profession. My main profession is I'm a sports coach of 6 years now. I coach anything from children to grown-ups, anything from beginners to competitive athletes that compete like on a national level or an international level even.
In what sport?
In diving, with somersaults and all that stuff. I used to be pretty good at it, and now I'm a coach in it. I also coach ranked 5's Challenger. I coach the US team Gemini Esports. And currently, I think we're sitting number 19th on the ladder. So this is kind of what I do, and this takes up most of my time these days.
Yeah, we definitely know very much about that, about how a side project or whatever you want to put it take a lot of your time.
A hobby quickly becomes a second profession.
Yeah, I do find time to write once in a while. I would have put out a ton of articles and stuff like this, but it's so hard to get going, Mm-hmm. So, but yeah.
Yeah, so we had talked about your article that you put together. It's Hazel's Crash Course for Self-Improvement for Ranked 5s. And that's because we've had a lot of people write into us in the podcast, hey guys, you guys talk about solo queue all the time. What about Ranked 5s? What if I want to put a team together? And, we can only touch on that so often because the majority of the game is solo queue, or at least the majority of players who play this game. But there is that subset who really love Ranked 5s, me being one of them. And there's a lot of little steps you can take to get better at Ranked 5. So I think we're going to jump in there and kind of do a recap of what we talked about. And I'm going to let you take the floor on that one and kind of start. Where would you start? If I'm a player who's got access to a community like the T-Force community and I pull 5 people together, what is the best way to start to learn to play as a team?
To learn to play as a team, absolutely the best way to figure out how to do this whole rank 5s business is to sit down with the guys and then talk out what are your goals for the thing. Because if you have 3 guys who just want to play casually and 2 guys who really, really want to try hard and see how high they can get, that animosity right there will lead to probably 80 or 90% of all your problems. Figuring out that you guys have roughly the same goals and roughly the same ideas in mind is absolutely the most important thing when you're putting together a team. And then also sitting down and kind of working out a plan and a schedule first. So not like you don't want to be setting up a situation where like you're like do the whole hardcore with, we play this day at this time and this time. That's fine. But really, you want to be making sure that you build some really good habits first. Stuff like, what do we do after the games? How much time do we dedicate to replay analysis and stuff like this? So yeah.
Yeah, I like the way that goes because I think there's that you can run into that quite a bit, especially finding people that don't mesh well personality wise. Like you just grab 5 people, you're like, oh, we're gonna go play. And I think one of the things that I found very easy to do is after a win, go, all right, well, we did so well and we stomped those, bronze people because we're all diamonds. We're just going to go to the next game and not have any kind of plan. So is it best for somebody to, I'm assuming it's best for somebody to take charge and really become the leader? That doesn't have to necessarily be the shot caller, but be the leader and keep people together. Like after a game, does that person say, we need to take 5 minutes to talk about what we did right, what we did wrong, what we're going to do next game?
This is up to, I'd say, interpersonal dynamics, like what does your group do really well? Because some people can make the whole democratic system with everybody gets a say in it. And some people can make that work really well. What I would advise is that, just like one guy naturally is probably going to take charge and do that kind of thing. Really, the only very important thing is make sure you take breaks after every single game. It's just so important. The brain just cannot concentrate for longer than that anyways. So, yeah.
Gives you a bit of time to decompress.
Absolutely. And also, it allows you to shape any relevant information and feedback you have on the game and take it out of emotional context. Meaning, if you're coming out of a game either winning or losing, sometimes you'll actually have some relevant stuff to, like some relevant feedback on the game, but it'll be kind of clouded in your head and all this adrenaline and emotions coming out of the game. So maybe you're really, really mad. And, we should be better defensively becomes, fucking jungler never comes, right? Mm-hmm. And that kind of thing is so yeah, take the break and make sure that you can shape it out of context or explain it out of context.
Well, then I guess we're going to talk about replay analysis, or at least how you decompress it for those games. It doesn't necessarily have to be with the replay, I suppose. But during that break, let's say that we take a 10-minute break. We're going to take 5 minutes to take a break and 5 minutes to talk about what happened. What is the best use of our time as a group that has no democratic system? What's the best use of our time to figure out how to become better into the next game?
To answer that question, I'd like to take us back to before we even play that game, honestly.
Okay.
Because the best way to improve is to pick a topic that you want to focus on. Meaning, these 5-minute breaks, 10-minute breaks, or between the games, they really should be dedicated to discussing how well you did in relation to your overall goal. So maybe you're focusing on dragon control for an entire week or a couple of days, right? If you can, or in the time between games, you're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to look at not how well did we do this game. It doesn't matter if you win or lost. You want to be looking at how well did we do in relation to our goal, which was dragon control, right? And then you can discuss back and forth on that. But overall, make sure that all the discussions revolve back to the same point so that everybody's on the same page. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, so that playing League of Legends doesn't end up being about winning or losing, but ends up being about becoming better, improving, learning. That's
right. I like that advice, because this actually goes into a lot of things that are a lot of topics that we have been discussing recently, and that's how to talk to each other. And you actually have a big piece in your article you wrote, how to talk to each other, because at the end of the day, we're all people. We all want to be patted on the back. We all want to say good job, and we don't want to be held accountable for our mistakes. But let's talk about that. You go over how to talk to people. How do you recommend that you have a conversation as a group of 5 random people?
Ideally, the kind of conversation you have is, first of all, taken out of emotional context, as I mentioned. But more importantly, I think the best thing to know, or the best thing to agree on in a game setting, is make sure that every single bit of information that you relay is bringing something new to the board. So there's no need to repeat what the other guy said in different words, because often you'll have kind of the campfire mentality where everybody has to sit down and agree on one thing, which is very, very time inefficient. What you really want to be doing is you want to make sure that all discussion is relevant to your main goal. So ban stuff like, if your goal is the dragon control, just cut out people who say stuff like, I think we should focus on ganking or something like that, because that is absolutely irrelevant and it detracts from the goal of improving. It becomes more about, finding flaws, and that's not necessarily good. Also, when you're having this discussion, make sure that you have a guy who has a loud and booming voice or something who can really interrupt everybody and say, we're stopping now. Because at the end of the day, if you can't have a guy who's sort of the what's it called, the rope holder?
You can reel everybody back in.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody who can sort of nudge people and keep them focused on the same thing. And yeah, I think that's it.
I like this discussion because it really does push us into talking about past tense. There's a lot of times when we get in, I mean, I've been there. I've done it. I've been in the middle of the game and we'll have an argument. You know, you shouldn't have fucking done that. You shouldn't have been here. You shouldn't have done that. And eventually one of us has to say, shut up. We have to focus on what's happening. We need to focus on what's going on now. And I can see that being very easy to do, especially after the game, if emotions are running high and people are a bit upset. But as you said, past tense is banned. And I'll let you talk a little bit more about that. Why, you know, you bolded that. You made sure people realize past tense is banned.
Well, when you're talking past tense, right? When you have a discussion in past tense, what you're doing is you're recounting the events as they have unfolded already. Meaning there's no chance of you going back and being able to change the game that you just played. Whenever you talk in past tense, first of all, you're looking to be attributing blame to somebody or something, and what happens through that is these interpersonal issues. More importantly, well, the game is already over. You have to be able to take it out of context and then take what just happened in that game and push it forward. So you want to be looking ahead of you instead of behind you, essentially. Make sure that all of these past tense discussions, that they don't end up becoming some sort of blame game, because typically what's going to happen is one guy will have a very, very loud voice, and he'll just talk over and say, well, I guess we lost because of this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why you lost. It matters how can you stop it from happening again, right? So I think I know. So the whole thing with I
was gonna say, so this is one of those times where you have the big booming person, the person who has the do all end all be, the personality, the authority. There we go. Yeah, he uses the authoritative voice to say, guys, we need to stop. We need to take a break. Stop yelling at each other. Stop. Let's be friends. Let's be family rather than that, because placing blame has never done anything. We talk a lot about that on the podcast as well, about in solo queue. Just saying somebody, I can't believe you just fucking died. Like that never helps the team. So, and it's very easy to do that when you get into a ranked 5 situation, or so it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. The way to phrase this really, I think, is would you rather have a car that works or a car that doesn't work, but at least you know why it's broken, right? That's really all it is. The car needs to go first and foremost. After that, knowing the inner workings of it is kind of, it's not that important.
Sure. So let's say that we've played a game, and it's the next day. We all sit down. We're going to do some kind of analysis. You specifically mentioned that play-by-play analysis is not the best way, but it's the easiest. It's probably the way that most people sit down and go, all right, well, at level 1, this happened.
Yes.
What's the best way to look at it at a replay as 5 people?
The problem with replay analysis is it doesn't represent a perfect slice of your gameplay. You can have different people who have different levels of energy and different levels of engagement from game to game. Meaning, essentially, what you want to be doing is, whenever you do replay analysis, give one replay, record 5 of your games, give one to each one of the guys in the team, and then have that guy write down some pointers in that game. So not any specific individual mistakes, like, no, top laner bought the wrong item, but have them write down an overall issue with the game. Because that way, first of all, you get through 5 replays in the time it would take to get through 1. But more importantly, you can hold these buzzwords together against each other and then figure out, well, if all 3 of us have dragon control written down as one of our problems in our individual replay, then we know that that's a trend. You want to be always working on trends. You don't want to be working on individual little things, right? So if there's a trend of one of your lanes falling behind in CS, then that's what you want to work on. If there's a trend of one of your lanes went behind in CS in one game, it doesn't matter. I mean, they won't do it the next game. So yeah, get as many replays as possible. Watch as many replays as possible, and then use them to figure out what the goal and the focus is for the next time.
Do you feel this changes based on the person's ranked, or I shouldn't say rank. That rank's a bad way to put that. Understanding of the game. Let's say I'm a group of 5 bronze players that I have a very hard time understanding the game, and that's why I'm in bronze. Whether I want to admit it or not, I don't understand why I'm building Tiamets and not a Bladed Ruin King, for example. Is there a different approach to players who have less knowledge than other players when it comes to getting better at the game? Is there a different approach you would have somebody take if they were less knowledgeable?
Well, I would say that really the whole topic is a little difficult to work around, because I feel that the best way to work on this is all of this self-improvement, like in building your knowledge of the game. That's something that you should do outside of rank 5's practice. So on the side, if you're very low elo and you really want to boost your improvement, the best thing you can do isn't sit down with 5 other guys in the same boat as you. You want to be sitting down with somebody who's ahead of you somehow, a higher elo guy, even if it's just a gold player or somebody who's slightly ahead of you and has figured out what's the next step for you, right? Watch streams and all this. I don't think it's like the method doesn't change, because all of the things that you need to get that higher elo is very, very individual.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I wanted to see if you had any other thoughts, how to do it that way, because a lot of times that's why we kind of do the whole patch note analysis, so people can kind of get an idea of how to analyze the game. But I think if you're at that point where you're trying to play ranked 5s, it might be better for you to, or I guess self-improvement's best done outside in solo queue than it does in a ranked 5 scenario.
For a coach such as yourself, what are like some traits or like personality quirks that you both like and dislike for members of whatever teams you're coaching? Like, what individual like small things do you appreciate the most out of a coach, like from a coaching position?
Okay, so the really, really interesting dynamic, something that you'll also see a lot in the like the higher you get, the more you'll meet these people, which is people who are really, really good and know that they're really, really good. This is a huge, huge issue and a huge source of conflict, and you'll often be playing with them in rank 5 settings, because what happens in this kind of situation is this guy, first of all, has some confidence that he can rely on in terms of his gameplay, so he'll be willing to go for the more aggressive plays, the outplay, stuff like this. But also it often means that as a coach, you'll have to push really, really hard to make him do what you say, because he's always going to be thinking, I know best kind of thing. Something that, from a coaching perspective, I can really, really appreciate in a person is somebody who's willing to be able to stop swearing. And that sounds really funny, but when you play rank 5s with your guys, what's going to happen is one guy may be losing lane. And that one guy will be saying, every time he gets 1v1'd or ganked or something, he'll be saying, shit, fuck, out loud in team chat, right? As long as he's the only person getting ganked, he's the only person getting demoralized. But as soon as he starts making these outcries, he's demoralizing the entire team. So somebody who can put that away, right? Somebody who can put their emotions on the shelf and acknowledge the fact that fuck and shit is left for after the game, right? I think that's what I would say here.
I like that a lot. That I'd never thought about that. How
one person's sort of poisoning the well.
Yeah. How do you go about taking that one person? I know not the person we had just talked about, but the person who knows they're good and is playing on the team and thinks they should always carry the game because they're so good. How do you take a team of 5 superstars? And I'm going to point to Elements, for example. We saw Elements crash and burn last season. You had a team of 5 superstars. But if you look at somebody like TSM, where you have a team of, you've got 2 superstars and then 3 pillars. And they're doing so. They do generally do well, at least in NA, because they have 3 pillars. How do you take a team, an Elements, and turn that into a TSM, where you have the pillars and you can still have people making plays? You understand my question?
Yeah. Are we talking like ranked, like professional play right now? Because that's a whole different.
Well, I know it's a whole different story, but I mean, when we go into when we go into a ranked 5 scenario, it's very easy to have 5 players who are all diamond, let's say, for example, that all know they're good at the game and they all can carry individually. They made it to diamond on their own accord, right? How do you take those players, if you were to coach those 5 ranked 5 players or make it for yourself, to make some of those guys realize that they need to put the ego aside and just prop up the team?
Set rules. First and foremost, set rules. A ton of rules. As many rules as you can possibly get. It's kind of like going into a workplace, just any random workplace. If there are no rules for dress code, if there are no rules for conduct, stuff like how you should behave with customers, it's going to be really, really hard to have a top quality environment, right? As soon as you set a rule, what you're doing is you're streamlining the group's dynamic. And every single time you set one of these rules, what happens is you're forcing people to be in a situation where every single time they break the rules, first of all, the rest of the group will frown on it, which is not comfortable in that setting, so you'll really quickly stop doing it. And second of all, your focus becomes less on you as an individual and more on you as a representative of the unit, if that makes sense. So stuff like no swearing in games, stuff like let the coach speak first after games in the analysis section, stuff like enforcing taking the breaks. All of these things, they're not just good for you in a health sense and in a learning sense, but they also make sure that the group can have these common rules. And as long as you're following the rules, you're in a professional capacity. You're there in your working capacity. And that's I think that's the number one, or that would be the number one way to really make sure that the superstars calm down, because they're no longer there in capacity of their egos and their gameplay. They're there as a part of a team, right?
Right, because the way, I guess I would say that one misconception is that the way ranked 5s play is similar to solo queue, and really it's an entire and whole different beast. How would you, not even as a coach, but we'll go as a player of ranked 5's team that has the understanding of what you've read, how would you go in and start developing strategy for what you're going to play? I understand that we could say we're going to focus on taking dragon, but team comps and champion select and all that's such a big piece of ranked 5s. How do you go about learning all that, besides watching professional players play?
I think for a newly started team, the best way to go about it is just to shamelessly steal team comps from the pro scene. Mostly because it's very, very easy for new guys to take the easy way out and then just say, oh, we lost because of our team comp, right? If you have a team comp that's picked by professionals and won with by professionals, it doesn't become about the team comp anymore. If you're interested in, or if you need to become better strategically, what I advise is go into custom games as 5 people. It can feel a little bit silly, and then walk out the different plays you're going to be doing. So stuff like an invasion level 1, have all the guys walk it out, and then say, give it a little title and call it invasion strategy number 1, and then as you're loading into the game, you'll say, okay, we have a strong early game, so we'll do invasion strategy number 1. The problem isn't that it's hard to learn strategics. The problem is that 99% of the time, once you have a ranked team, you're gonna be doing it the solo queue way. So you'll just fan out level 1 and then make sure you don't get invaded, right? But that's a shame, because you have all that whole new layer of communication and synergy between you 5 guys that you can really, really work with. So it's kind of a trial and error thing. Just try a lot of different things. But commit to trying them.
So don't be afraid to fail.
Don't be afraid to fail. Oh, that's the big one. Like if you have a situation where you don't do something because you're afraid of failing, leave the team, start a new one without elo, and then join that one. Because success can never be the goal. Improvement can be the goal.
Okay. I like that. I think that's something that more people need to learn. Never be afraid to fail. You could lose every single one of your games, but as long as you're learning something and becoming better each time, it's worth your time.
I coached a player at one point who I think he lost around 800 games with the same champion. And he was bronze 3 at that point, I think. And I figured out the only actual issue he had was that he was very, very scared of doing something new on the champion. Every single time he loaded into the game, he would go to the exact same spot on the map and then stand there and do nothing. I watched, I think, 12 of his game, and not in a single game did he change his behavior in any way. And the first step to getting better isn't to do the right thing. The first step to getting better is to do the wrong thing a ton of times. And that's really the number one thing.
Break out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely, absolutely. Taking the first step is the hardest.
I was about to say, that's not just applicable for the ranked 5 sort of setting either. That's kind of applicable generally overall to any of your play. Like, you'll learn way more of what you can get away with or not get away with by getting crushed for trying something risky.
Right. That is one of the things that we try to preach, and I think it does go over into ranked 5s, is that let yourself stay in a situation for a second longer than what you're comfortable being in there for. Because maybe that extra cooldown comes off for you and you're able to turn something around. But you're right. You need to let yourself push outside the comfort zone. And I guess the same thing goes with playing with 4 other people, because that's outside of most people's comfort zone. Actually having to own up to your mistakes, for at least, because the team is counting on you to do something. Well, since we are already speaking about team comps, I wanted to move into talking about 2v1 specifically. We had or lane swapping, or because there's a lot of these people who are playing ranked 5s, and myself included, watch the professionals do it. Now, I understand why they do it, for whatever team comp they're running, but I don't think a lot of people understand what is the power behind a 2v1, how do I practice this 2v1, and why am I doing it? Now, you said you've been doing a lot of research on this, or at least been putting it together. Go for it. Let's talk 2v1.
So I work with a couple of really, really quality analysts in my Challenger team. And I pretty much had them do exclusive research on 2v1s because they're such a mystery to me. Mostly in account of the fact that pretty much the entire issue here is that you give up the dragon control if you initiate the lane swap. So I've been having to go through a lot of this learning thing, and it's very, very different because nobody has actually, I believe, done a super extensive job on writing out a piece or making a video that really goes in depth with all the different options here. Overall, in terms of the lane swap, what you're looking at 3 different reasons for lane swapping. You have the first reason being you have a squishy hypercarry of some sort that you need to get into the late game as unscathed and as quickly as possible. Stuff like Twitch, Vayne, or Jinx, typically, right? It's not that you can't lane, it's just that it's easier to not lane with that person. Number 2 is you have an opportunity to shove really, really quickly with one champion or a set of champions, and you have an opportunity to take the tower or the enemy tower first and then swap back in the lane in time to save your own tower. That gives you a free tower, pressure on the top side of the jungle, and you might even be able to save the dragon if you do it quickly enough. And the last option is you have a support that's really, really CC heavy and roam, or good for roaming, stuff like Alistar, Thresh maybe. Annie is really great for that. And you want to have pressure on the mid lane and the top lane at the same time. So essentially it's about getting your hyper carry to the late game quickly, getting that early tower gold, or just having that extra pressure from a roaming support, typically. What's really, really interesting about lane swaps is most of the time people will do the lane swap because they know that they're supposed to do the lane swap, and then they've seen pros either do the fast shove or the freeze, and then when the enemy team reacts, they have trouble adjusting to this. The best way to, I can go into talk hours about all the different reactions to different things that happens in a lane swap.
Oh, feel free to. I mean, we have plenty of time to talk about it. And I think that the lane swap, I know we went over back to your article, but I think the primary thing that I like to discuss today is strategy and how to develop a strategy for your ranked 5s team, and 2v1s seem to be the go-to and have been for a couple seasons. So it's good for people to hear. So you got the floor. Go for it.
Really what you want to be doing before you head into the game and do the lane swap is you want to be, because there's a limited amount of options or possibilities that the enemy team can do, right? They can shove the tower quickly and try to do the same thing. Take your bot tower really fast. They can go for the dragon. They can go for the tower and the dragon. They can send this support top lane to help the top lane. All these things. What you want to do is you want to sit down and dedicate a fair amount of time to detailing, first of all, what's your game plan? Like, are we going to do the fast shove? Are we going to do the freeze? But second of all, and more importantly, when the enemy reacts to our lane swap, what is our counter reaction, right? So maybe you send the Vayne top lane and then you freeze the wave to get that ton of gold on him and deny the enemy top laner. But then suddenly the enemy bot lane just shoves really quickly, takes the tower, takes the dragon, and now you're totally down just because you wanted some gold on your Vayne, right? Mm-hmm. Make sure that you have an appropriate reaction to every single thing that can happen. It doesn't have to be long. Like, just sit down and say, if they shove hard, we shove hard. If they go for a gank in the mid lane, we shove hard top lane. If they send the support top lane, we'll swap back down bot lane or something like that, right? Just make up a list of appropriate reactions for everything, because otherwise it's going to become chaotic as all hell, and that's really, really unfortunate if that happens. Another really fun strategy that I've been playing with a little bit recently is assigning points to different objectives on the map. Because in a lane swap, what happens is the value of objectives can become really, really clouded, and suddenly you don't know if getting the 2 top towers is worth more than losing the bot tower and the dragon, say. So just assign like different points to different things, and as soon as the enemy goes for an objective that has a set of points, you go for something of equal or higher value. It makes looking over like who's ahead and who's behind in this lane swap really, really easy. Typically, I'd say stuff like, an enemy buff is 2 points, a large wave is 1 point, a tower is 3 points, a dragon is 3 points, an inhib's 4 points, or something like that. It's really, really simple. It makes it super, super easy to have an overview or like a sense of who's actually coming out ahead in this lane swap. And just make sure that you react by going for something of really, really high value.
So what is your general reaction if you had just previously mentioned freezing the wave, not hard pushing, but the enemy now hard pushes and they take the dragon and now they're ahead by 6 points, right? Rather than you have no points. What is the ideal reaction in that situation as a team? Is it to keep freezing up top, or is it to automatically start pushing as hard as they're pushing to try and equalize the playing field?
Oh, that depends a lot on what champions you're rolling.
Sure.
Typically, though, it's really all about how hard can you afford to fall down, so to speak. It doesn't matter if you're 6 points behind if the enemy can't do anything with that 6 points. So say you have a mid laner that's really, really good at clearing waves, and there's no chance of getting dove because you have an Alistar or something. It doesn't matter if the enemy is ahead in gold and in a dragon. If you can live through that issue long enough for the lane swap to become relevant, so to speak. So, you'll sometimes see that, especially in Korea, where you'll see teams that give up objectives voluntarily and then just go for the late game simply because that's their only option. They'll lose anything level 1 because the enemy team just has stronger champions level 1, right? Or early game, I should say. The appropriate reaction to that fast shove, if you have decided to freeze, is make sure that you have a mid laner that's really, really good at clearing waves, and then try to map out how many things you can go for. Mm-hmm. There's a reason you froze the wave in the first place, and I think if that reason is still true, then you should keep freezing the wave, as long as it doesn't cost you too much, right? Doing the fast push coming out of a freeze will lead to chaos.
I really like this point system that you've come up with, because it's a very easy way to quantify what's going on in the map.
It's a way to easily see what you need to invest in almost to get the game going more in your direction. So like say, okay, cool, if the enemy is going to take bottom tower and dragon, but it's better off to have this Vayne free farming top while they do that in X amount of time, eventually take these turrets, and they can't take, like, again, going back to the example you used, they can't dive like a Ziggs in mid because Alistar's sitting right there and they're not going to kill him and he's going to be able to wave clear. That investment of time in the top lane to get Vayne or Jinx or X hyper carry going for late game might pay off in dividends more than them being able to get that early rush dragon tower combo, or vice versa.
Do you quantify time, in-game time, based on points?
As in,
as a system, as in to say, because there are a lot of team comps like you mentioned that they work really well in the mid game if they have money on them, if they can have that extra 300 gold or 250 gold or whatever it is for a couple towers and the 6% dragon buff. But can you also use time as your friend, or can you talk about if we waited out 3 minutes, we're gonna make up 2 points?
Or do you put like time goals, like we want to be able to do this by X amount of minutes or whatever?
It's very, very difficult to do sometimes because there's so many variables going from game to game. Different champions you're playing against, a different skill level in opponents and such. However, it's a really, like, especially in terms of all the things that are going to respawn, such as Dragon Baron buffs and camps even. It's a very, very good idea to use this time as part of your system. You can think in intervals between when it dies and when it spawns next, and what you're going to have to do in order to go for it the next time. So if you have that comp that's really, really weak in the early game, and you have to give up a tower and a dragon, what you want to be doing is you want to say, okay, what are the steps we need to take in order to get strong enough to go for the next dragon? Typically, making timed plays is very, very difficult. But you can always hold your like the amount of time it takes to do something up against your previous games, and then see if you're improved. So say you do a lane swap and then you go for the fast push. If it takes you 4 minutes one time and 7 minutes the other time, figure out why it took you so long the second time, and then work on that.
Okay.
So I'd say you can use it as sort of a way to spot like flaws in your tactics, but don't use it as part of the point system because it's too convoluted.
Too many variables to account for
absolutely.
to make it. I understand.
Oh, also a little pointer on the point system. Champion kills give 0 points because champion kills are a way to get objective. They're not a goal in itself. You can win the game through 2 methods. You can have the enemy team surrender, and you can have the enemy team's nexus explode. One is 100% success, and the other is 50-50 depending on the enemy players. So champion kills 0 points. Just take what you get from those champion kills.
Now this is a question primarily for me, just because I'm curious, because I really like this point system. Are points static, or do they change based on the enemy team comp? Because a tower could potentially be worth more points for the enemy team than it could be for you based on the gold you're receiving.
That's actually a really interesting point. Typically, I'd assign static values because it makes it easier to work with. Obviously, you want to be aware of the differences from game to game, and you can use that. But if you have the static points, what's really, really good for you is you can sit down and say, okay, guys, last week we had maybe 20 points by 20 minutes, and this week we only had 10 points by 20 minutes. So why did we have so little points, right? A second thing you can do with static points is it's very, very chaotic to figure out when to fight. One of the biggest issues you'll see, especially in low elo, is you'll have people who fight a ton but nowhere near anything relevant, right? It's the spawn of the famous just ace their team, better take Wraiths or now Raptors meme, right? And it's really because it's the only thing that's right next to you as you did that fight, right? So as long as you keep thinking, where can I score points? Where can I score points? Where can I score points on the map? You'll always position yourself near that, and it makes it really, really easy to capitalize on mistakes the enemy team makes, and capitalize on sort of like making sure that you aren't just randomly positioned in the bot lane all of a sudden.
I'm actually really upset that I never thought about this point system. Like, I love it. I'm going to tell people to use it. But I'm actually upset that I didn't, because it's such a cool system to use that I'm going to continue using from this point forward, if you don't mind, telling people how to get better at this game. Because if you can, by yourself, do the point system, even in solo queue, to help your team understand how to move to towers and other objectives, because that always seems to be the problem. Until you hit, like, diamond or high plat, most people don't touch objectives or don't try to focus on objectives. Like you said, ace the team, take Wraiths, or whatever. Let's move the conversation away from points and then that back to ranked 5s, and let's talk about champion select, because I remember when your initial email to me, you pointed that out, that you're like, it's a whole nother beast, and I think I said the same thing we were talking about there. Champion select in itself, in my opinion, is a mini game in and of itself. let's talk about perfecting champion select, how you would go about it. You know, if you have a team comp in mind, how do you use that team comp to your advantage in champion select? We'll assume you're blue side, so you have first pick.
Okay, so the main issue you will see, like there are two different strategies essentially, and it depends on whether or not you're going for competition or for improvement. If you're in a tournament and you really just want to go for the wins, what you do with your bans is you ban all your counters, right? You ban if you can scout the enemy team perfect, then ban their good champions. But otherwise, you want to be banning their counters, right? Your team comp's counters. Stuff like playing a hard engage comp and banning out the Janna, for example. That would be a really quality example. However, it's not actually a really good idea to do in terms of being in an improvement setting. So oftentimes you want to leave open the champions you're not good at playing against, simply because then you'll learn to play against them, right? And you'll figure out what the issues are with your team comp. It's going to be really difficult to do if you're in a situation where like the team isn't centered around this improvement mindset yet, because they'll be like, why didn't we ban the Janna? God damn it, right? but they won't like focusing on the fact that you actually didn't ban it because we need to learn to play against it. In terms of picks and bans, you have different strategies that are going to be centered around some very key picks. Typically what you want to do is you want to pick the champion that has the most counter potential as late as possible to make sure and try to bait out the enemy team strategy. So there's always going to be high priority picks open. In this meta, for example, it would be stuff like Sejuani, stuff like Sivir, stuff like this, right? Yeah, Gragas.
Well, obviously, Gragas, Sejuani until 511 hits, or the actual Sejuani buffs. Nerfs come through.
Nerfs go through.
But we've been seeing a lot of Evelynn, Alistar, Gnar. Gnar's like ridiculously strong right now.
He's good.
Malachi, he's always been strong. A great first pick. Morgana, great flex pick and stuff. Let's say you've identified what's strong and why you do it. Let's talk about picking and champion select to force the team to react to you. Such as first picking a Gnar because he's strong, or first picking a Morgana to make it a flex pick. Is there strategy in doing it that way, or it's kind of like a really open-ended question here of how to properly pick in champ select that I'd really like to hone in on.
Oh yeah. The problem here is that it really depends on what kind of team comp you're playing against. Typically, it's very difficult to bait people into a couple of picks. So what you can do instead is you can leave the picks that are quote unquote obvious for the very beginning. So you pick that Sejuani that works just with any team comp, and then leave the picks that really define what kind of style you're playing as late as possible in the process. So stuff like, say you want to go for a poke comp, pick that Jace or that Nidalee or that Ziggs really late in the process. So they won't spot out that that's your actual goal and your actual strategy. I'd say like 99% of the time what you're looking at is, if you're blue side, you would typically pick jungle or support first rotation, and then AD carry supported jungle and second rotation, and then top and mid last rotation. Sometimes you leave the AD carry for the last rotation as well. But typically go for the junglers first, or the supports first, simply because they don't really show the goal of your comp.
Now, to become a good ranked 5s team, or even a good challenger professional team, you need to be adaptable. You need to be able to adapt to any situation. And while you're picking through this, and you've picked your 5 team, you've picked their 5 team. Is this at the point you decide that you're going to lane swap as soon as you see what they have, and you can try to identify what their team comp is going to do?
You can set up the lane swap really well in pick and bans already. So you can ban out the champions that are good at clearing from the top lane, stuff like banning out the that would be stuff like Maokai, I guess.
Yeah.
But you can't really say for sure whether lane swapping is a good or a bad idea until afterwards, until you have picked. What I would say is, like last time, don't be afraid to fail. If you really want to practice lane swapping, just pick random champions almost, and just go and try lane swapping, see what works, what doesn't work. But yeah, you can't really like facilitate whether or not lane swapping is the easiest or the best strategy from the very beginning. Not until you see what champions are in the game.
Okay. Chira,
Okay.
I don't know, you've been sitting back there. Do you have anything to add to the conversation of champion select or just ranked 5s in general?
We've covered a shitload of stuff.
I know. I'm not trying to end the interview. I just want to make sure since you look like you were kind of sitting back there. I like to pick on you.
I'm taking this all in.
Well, then let's go ahead and move on to tournaments and competition, because that's the last piece in here, and I'd really like to talk about that because I know that I personally, when I was playing in a ranked 5s team, we went and played the Alienware Arena stuff when that was around, and we did very well. And I learned a lot about being a top laner, learned a lot about the game, learned a lot about myself. At what point should you go into a tournament and competition? At what point should you just stay in ranked 5s? How do you determine once you're in there how to play the game differently than if you're playing ranked 5s? Let's just talk about tournaments, competitions, and as a whole.
When is ideally when you feel like you have properly perfected a certain set of strategies, right? So if you're in a situation where you've spent a whole week or 2 weeks or a month or a year, let's say a year, you spent an entire year learning how to play a poke comp, and now you just feel like your poke comp is so crisp, try it out in a tournament and see how well it fares. I wouldn't go into any tournaments until you have 2 or 3 strategies that you can be using. Simply because tournaments are, what they do for you is they work kind of like a ladder that you can you can go on to different steps and then see how far up the ladder you can get, right? So you can say, okay, our poke comp is maybe 3rd step of the ladder strong, while our hard engage comp is 5th step of the ladder strong. Right. Playing in one tournament is relatively dumb, or I'd say useless. Playing in 2 tournaments allows you to have a basis to not only gauge how much have you improved compared to the competition, but how much is one strategy stronger than the other. It's why I would advise, unless you're a professional team or a high challenger team, I'd advise actually just rolling the same strategy throughout an entire tournament, because it gives you more reference points, right? So stuff like, playing poke comps the first 2 rounds and then hard engage comp in the 3rd round, it's not like it will throw off the opponents and make pick and bans easier for you, but it won't allow you to see exactly how strong you are at executing one specific comp. Yeah, I think that's really when you want to be doing competitions.
This sounds like it goes back to the same point that was made earlier, where we keep saying that don't be afraid to fail, because if you can go through an entire tournament playing only poke comps and you can make it to round 3 or 4 with it, you can use that failure, which isn't even a failure in and of itself. It's just it's a building block, a stepping stone that you need to use, and this is a good way to do that.
And even still, if you hit a point where your poke comp, again, we'll use that as the arbitrary example of a strategy or whatever you want to pick. If that's high enough to get you through the majority of the way through a tournament, and you need to work on it slightly more to, get that up to the next rung on the ladder, but at the same time, you can practice it enough to maintain that and end up swapping to another strategy so that you have 2 really hammered down sort of methods to go with for the next tournament. I feel like that just straight up adds a whole different level of versatility when you have that confidence in your back pocket of, hey, we're going to try this thing new, but if we have to go back to this old play style, we know that we already have that way to play pretty hammered down.
I believe it was Eric Thomas, the motivational speaker, who says, I need you to fail forward. And that's really all there is to it. You have to be able to fail and take something relevant away from it. And tournaments give you a unique opportunity to put yourself in that high adrenaline and highly competitive mindset. You'll often see players in teams who have a completely different reaction to winning or losing compared to what they would in a normal ranked 5s game. I've worked with people who were really quiet and down-to-earth people, but who ended up walking away from the computer crying because they lost the tournament in the semifinals, simply because it's such a unique thing to do. You can't play tournaments every single day, every single game. So when you are in a tournament, make sure that you really, really go through that tournament game as if it was, your most beloved movie. Really pause every single second once you do the replay analysis and really analyze in intimate detail how do you react under stress, because it's the part of your gameplay that's most hard to practice simply because you're limited by how many tournaments there are. But it's also one that's really, really relevant because until you are in a tournament, you don't know how you will react in a tournament.
Well, it's a different level of adversity. I mean, you could argue that it's as different as the mentality that a lot of people go into normal games with, because compared to ranked games, like, I mean, I know people, for example, that are way more laid back in normal games, and as soon as they get into ranked, like, they become a completely different person. At the same time, ramp that up 1,000 times for a tournament situation where the stakes are up and there's like, there's just bigger stuff on the line potentially. It brings out a part of people that you wouldn't see otherwise, and you can pretty much see how people are going to deal with adversity one way or another and move on from there.
Also, what tournaments does, like, the only real way you can have of gauging how people are going to be playing in tournaments is in other high intensity situations that you're in your rank 5 settings. Typically what I say to people in this area is whenever your team hits a promotion or what's it called, the placement, not the placement, the other one, the one where you go from silver 3 to silver 4 and win twice. The promotion matches, right?
Right.
Once you hit those, you hit kind of the same level of energy as you would in a tournament, because it becomes that tournament format. You have to win more than you lose and such. And you can be a really, really good team that just falls under pressure. And playing, like, noting how you perform differently in your promotion matches or in tournaments is a really, really great way of getting to work on how to actually climb the actual ladder, because if you can take information away from that, that will help you and make you better when you play these high intensity matches. That's really all that matters, right? That's what's going to take you up, essentially.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I got a dog going nuts in the background now, and she kind of she interrupted my train of thought. We've gone through a lot of information in this. We usually go for about an hour, so we're walking toward the end of the hour here. We've gone through a lot of information. I think a lot of people are going to definitely like some of the points. Especially, I think I'm going to put back to the point system. That one I know. Punch, who was supposed to be here with us today, but unfortunately couldn't make it. He has a ranked 5 team that he plays with just to help the guys for self-improvement, and they've always been looking for that next step of a way to get better at the game. And Hazel, you bring out so much more information than I think any of us could have thought of.
Right.
Now, speaking just to you and how you got into this, can you talk to how you specifically go about coaching a team and what you've taken from your diving expertise into League of Legends, and what do you see that may be the same, between people that are working in esports and real sports, or doing the either or?
So while I got into league coaching as having already been a coach of quite a few years, I came into this project thinking, all the same points that I know about improvement and coaching is applicable right here. I could just use my background of sports coaching and then apply that completely to League of Legends. And you can't. Because of the fact that, or the very interesting fact actually, that the main difference between coaching League and coaching sports is, in sports, typically you will have a coach from the very beginning. You will have a guy who's there with you when you begin playing football, and you'll have a guy there when you win the Olympics, or there's not Olympics in football, but the World Series or something. Not so in League. Typically in League, you don't actually pick up a coach until you're on a team and you've played for years, right? Meaning, as a coach coming in, you'll very, very quickly end up being what I call the 6th opinion guy. Just the guy who sits and does replay analysis with 5 players who also does replay analysis, right? And the way I've figured out of making my impact the same as somebody who's been used to having this coach all their life, because what happens when you haven't had a coach ever, basically, especially in somebody who feels they're already really, really good at the game, is it becomes, he said, she said, his word against my word. If you don't like what the coach says, you just don't do it. So what I found really, really works well, and that I can take from my sports coaching and apply to league coaching, is setting rules and things you do as a group that really, really helps you establish this professional atmosphere where it becomes less of my ego, his ego, their ego, and it becomes more of what can we do to improve as a group. Keep the focus, improvement focused, to keep the goal, improvement, not winning. So yeah, that's what I would say there.
Okay, great. I think that helps people have a better idea of what a coach does in League of Legends, because, like you said, a lot of times they come in late, and to parrot everything that you just said. And I see a lot of professional teams that are having problem with coaches right now because it's a whole brand new thing. And
well, I part of it,
luck who's out there doing it.
Yeah, part of it's like, I think it's just so new for some of these people that like the idea of respecting an outside point of reference on people that are looking at the whole rather than like segmented parts from inside. As soon as it reaches to a point where like there's a little bit more of people listening to the individuals who are looking at the whole picture, it's going to be a little bit better off for the teams.
Well, I actually have an article coming out on the 5 next steps, or the 5 things that professional players can take from the sports scene and apply successfully to their own methods. And it's stuff like that. It's stuff like making sure you use your coach as an analyst effectively. Stuff like enforcing all these things and just stealing stuff that's already there, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel.
Well, since we're walking down here at the hour at the end of this podcast, why don't I give you a moment to still just keep standing on that pedestal and talk a little bit about where players can go. You had mentioned a couple sponsors and whatnot. Do you have a place where people can go to find coaches? Do you have a place people can go to get better, paid, unpaid, whatever it may be?
Absolutely. If you are playing in a ranked team, or if you want to play in a ranked team, or if you just want to get better at League of Legends, my number one source of where you should go to is www.lol/coaching, or hyphen, is it called?
Hyphen, yeah.
Yeah, lol-coaching.com. It's a really, really great website. It has both free and paid coaches. It's up to the coach to decide whether they want to charge money. And a really, really good feedback system. This is the place where I started coaching League.
Yeah,
our buddy Horse Doctor has his own little.
Yeah, he's on there. I think we've actually had these. They sponsored us for a long time ago when they first started. They sponsored the podcast. Okay. We helped them get out there. Yeah, we love League coaching.
Mm-hmm. Another really, really great feature here is we just launched the seminar feature on the website, which is kind of like coaching, but it's sort of like a classroom style with a lecturer. Like the coach does lectures to many people, which is really, really great because it's not necessarily focused on you improving, but you learning, right? It's you learning a specific topic, and it's a really, really great way to get inspiration for different strategies you can be using, different methods you can find, different tactics. Typically, you'll come away from one of these seminars with 2 or 3 new things you just can't wait to try out in rank 5s. So I'd say like 99% of your success lies there, honestly. And if you want to get better at League, pick up a coach as soon as possible. Like, you cannot understand how valuable it is to have that extra guy who sits there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is actually true or not, but common like word of mouth tells me that 90% of the actual action that happens in a game is missed by the individual. Simply because you're so focused on playing your own game, like you don't see what happens, you don't see the issues, you don't see stuff, and it's why you'll find solo queue people who are just like so streamlined and focused on one specific individual little thing. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm looking at these. I'm actually looking at the seminars right now. There's one in here that I kind of want to join in myself. It's Learning the Jungle to Diamond, redated to tomorrow.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, by the time people listen to this podcast, it won't be out there, but I'm sure that seminar will be pushed out again or something similar of it, because I might actually have to join that seminar and sit down and listen to that and talk about that, because he's talking about everything that's my favorite, Sedge, Nudu, and Udyr, Nar, Hecarim, and Irelia.
Can I plug a little something, by the way?
More power to you.
Perfect. In a couple of days, probably around Monday. I don't know when this podcast is coming out. Friday, right?
Friday. It'll be out this Friday.
Okay, so by the time you listen to this podcast, you will on the seminar page be able to find a stream of educational seminars that I'm going to be doing that works kind of like in a formal training in how to be a coach and how to be an analyst. I'm doing a system where you learn how to be a coach on different levels. So I'll be having 4 different seminars from beginner to really, really advanced challenger and high level coaching. You'll learn all the cool stuff. So if you're interested in helping other people improve, come check out my seminar. The first one will be free. The other one are going to be paid. But the first one is going to be free for all to attend, both Europe and North America and otherwhere in the world if you live there.
How do these seminars normally work? Is it like a Twitch URL that's sent out, or is it pre-recorded and then sent to them?
These seminars will be interactive. I'll have both little lectures on how to go through like the different topics that we're going to be learning, and then I'll have interactive parts where I'll have all my students do exercises, different tasks that'll teach it. This will be conducted either on a what's it called, a TeamSpeak, or on Skype. They're kind of small. I'll be having 8 to 10 people per seminar, so they can really focus on teaching each and every single individual in the seminar. They're going to be quite long, but with huge breaks in the middle of it. Think of it as if you were going to a seminar in the weekends, right?
Okay.
So block
your day out for it, is what
you're saying. It's going to be, I think the first 2 are going to be, oh yeah, and there's an exam at the end. There's going to be an exam the day after, actually. That's really cool. The first 2 will be 4 hours, and then with an exam the day after. And the last 2 will be a weekend seminars, so 2 times 6 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's that. Yeah. So you need to be serious about this if you're going to join in.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I worked really hard on these, so they're going to be pretty much everything I know.
I think a lot of people. I'll mention it to Horst. I'm sure he already knows, but he might want to jump in that as well. I know he's been trying to break into that scene quite a bit. He's coaching there. Other than that, unless you got anything else to say, we'll wrap this up. Like I said, you've got the floor, so.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Shout out
very enlightening.
Yeah, shout out to Horse Doctor. Shout out to Gemini Esports, my team. Shout out to all the guys who's helped me. And yeah, you can check me out on law coaching, or I sometimes post articles on Reddit.
There you go. And as soon as the next article comes out, we'll make sure that people know via our Twitter and Facebook where they can go. We'll take care of you.
Amazing.
Like I said before, we're all in this to help everybody. Because at the end of the day, we want to make everybody better at this game. Because if they're better, I get better. That's how I've started looking at it. I've changed my attitude. After like 2 years ago, it was like, it was different. Now it's I want to make people better because it makes me better at the game.
If you can make all 27 million league players challenger, then it doesn't take much to get challenger.
Yeah, well, hey, if everyone's challenger, then something needs to change in the game and make it harder because someone figured out the secret so you could. It's like the Elo penis pill. You can grow 3 inches in a day, right?
What they don't want you to know.
I could use me some challenger honeys though. I hear they get a lot of girls.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Trinity Force podcast. Hazel, thank you so much for being on. We appreciate it. We've learned so much. Guys, check us out, Trinity Force Network. That's we will post Hazel's information so you guys can pick up his seminar. You can pick up his next article that comes out. Any other stuff that he puts out there. So, guys, that was episode number 265 of the Trinity Force podcast. We will see you all on Monday. Peace.
See ya.